Welcome to this month's book club. Today we are talking about Activate Brand Purpose by Scott Goodson and Chip Walker of Strawberry Frog. So, any initial opinions on the book or the topic or anything else before we get started?
The general consensus for most small companies, small to medium sized that get is to not be in it. Actually, it ought to be for large companies that stay away from politics. That's always been the case. However, depending how you approach it, because there are some companies that actually do well in politics, but it's how they approach it.
Mm-hmm.
It's all in the approach.
Right.
Sure, you're going to talk about that.
Well, over the past few years, we've had a few clients who were new to social media and we kind of dragged them into social media kicking and screaming. And the first thing they do is get dragged down a rabbit hole of politics. And so, my advice has always been, you just can't get dragged down rabbit holes. You can't get into arguments with people that have no intention of changing their mind. You can't get involved in politics. And that's kind of a simplistic answer. I think if we look at the broader scale of companies and the broader scale of everything else, there's always been a saying that you don't talk about sex, money, or politics in polite company. But the problem with that is that if you never talk about politics, then only impolite people are talking about politics. And look where that's got us, right? So there
are a few companies that who are doing it. Well, I use the word correctly, doing it right, and thriving.
Yeah.
From both sides.
Yeah, and they use the term, activism as opposed to politics.
Yes.
It's kind of a fine distinction, but it's an important one. Some of the examples from the book and elsewhere, REI, the recreational products company, they started closing on Black Friday with their Opt-Outside campaign. It's kind of a political thing. It's kind of like, you pick an enemy, which is the vast commercialism between Thanksgiving and Christmas, and say, you know what, we're going to fight this enemy and we are going to give our people the day off, the day after. Well, they're going to give them Thanksgiving Day and the day after off. They're not even accepting online orders during that time. And it works for them because it works for their employees, it works for their clients. It's a great cause for them because, people should be having the time to enjoy backpacking and skiing and snowboarding and snowshoeing and, all of the great stuff that REI embodies, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, it's about the matter of picking a cause that's aligned with your company and using that in a way that is not antagonistic, right? Another example is American Express and the Small Business Saturday, right?
Mm-hmm.
American Express was known for a long time as being kind of the harshest or the hardest on vendors, right? And so small businesses felt like, well, we can't afford American Express. They're not made for small business, because we pay the highest fee to American Express of any of the credit cards that we take. So they started doing Small Business Saturday and promoting small businesses and putting a lot of time and money into that endeavor. And they actually had a holiday designated by Congress, as Small Business Saturday. And we were sold a long time ago as consumers, because it's always been known as the big consumer advocate credit card, but it wasn't known as a vendor advocate credit card until they started that campaign, which I think is a good one.
Yes.
Closer to aviation, there's GMU over the past, it's been 15 years now that they have been working on becoming the community airport. And part of this is the efforts of Laura Kaufman, which we've reported on with our client SSC, building a park, setting up a curriculum for fifth graders and seventh graders at the park and the airport where they have different programs where they discuss, these are the jobs at the airport. This is what happens. This is where you can see all the cool equipment and get up close and personal. And it's become the community airport, as opposed to a lot of other airports that just have the big fences and the keep out signs and the, nobody is welcome here us versus them kind of feeling where, unless you own an aircraft, and you're already in the business, you are just not welcome at the airport. So I think that's a great activity, and more airports should be doing that. More aviation type companies should be including more people from outside the industry.
Shows my age, but when I started flying, that's the way airports were. Then something happened along the way, and now we're trying to move back that direction. That's a good thing.
9/11 happened, and
even before that.
Yeah, all of the security and everything else, and it just became really hard. And I know Laura fought a lot of battles to get rid of some of the super visible security measures and everything else, and make it possible to have kids close to the airplanes and kids close to the equipment and kids able to interact with pilots and controllers and ramp people and everything else. So that's a really cool thing. Another example that's really closer to home is Business Aircraft Records, Larry Heinbaugh's nonprofit that he set up basically because he was sick to death of the state of aircraft records and, the way they're taught, the way they are practiced, the way organizations and aircraft owners and everybody else is managing their aircraft records and exposing themselves to an awful lot of risk. They are subject to
managing them, as the case may be.
Exactly. So, fires, floods, rental car incidents, all kinds of crazy things have happened to aircraft records that have destroyed the value of airplanes over the years, and preventable means, so.
One of my favorites, they had just completed a D check on I don't know, the large, mid to large sized cabin jet. Sit outside the hangar, running up the engines, and it jumped the chocks. And before the pilot could shut it down, a nose that actually pushed into the hangar what it was sitting in front of. And although the aircraft itself was minimally damaged, the sprinkler system went off inside the hangar, and all the logbooks for the aircraft were destroyed because they were open while they were working on it.
Yeah.
And so therefore the aircraft was now totaled because there was no way to reconstruct the logs.
Unbelievable. And, there's a lot of different stories like that, like the people that returned, they had just come back from inspecting an aircraft. They had the logbooks in bankers' boxes in the trunk of the rental car. Something happened. They were late for their plane. They returned the rental car, forgot to take the logbooks out when they got on their flight, and the logbooks were never seen again. And I think the aircraft was totaled in that case as well. Yep. It's really, really hard to recreate those things. And
unless you're doing electronic versions.
That's true. Exactly. So, best practices, electronics, other kinds of things. That's what he's advocating. And it's a great purpose for, the business efforts that Larry's involved with as well. Another example from the aviation industry is some of the very innovative new aircraft designs like DBT Aero, that is a super sustainable, very versatile platform that can be used for lots of reasons, reducing noise, reducing fuel, making this technology available to a wider group of people because of lower cost, shorter runways, all of that stuff that innovation involves, I think really benefits from activism of all kinds. There's a million bandwagons that could jump on and benefit from. And that's Michael Duke's project. And if you'd like to find out more about that, they're a client as well. So all of those things are another one that actually B-Rad Elliott reminded me of this morning on LinkedIn. A lot of the local and national and international organizations are very heavily involved in a lot of the political issues that aviation is involved in, things like user fees, pilot retirement requirements, other things like that. So, even if you don't want to directly get involved in politics, you can have an advocate, by supporting the Colorado NBAA or the National Business Aviation Association or EAA or any of the alphabet soup of aviation organizations. A lot of them will advocate for us with a larger number of people, and people who are experienced in getting involved in politics and the legislative process and calling their senators and mobilizing people and all of those things that need to be done for good activism, right?
Yep.
Cool. So there are some guidelines in the book that I think are pretty cool. One of them is, they talk about what a company is like without what they call an activated purpose. And it's kind of like tied in with the why of why are we doing business? And you kind of got arrows going all over the place everywhere. Everybody's doing their own thing, but it's not really tracking in a single direction. But if you are able to create that activist mindset, is what they call it, within your organization about something that everybody cares about, then you're all pulling in the same direction, no matter what your job is. So, whether you're a ramp person or a desk person or a accountant or a pilot, you are doing the same thing for the same reason. You have a common enemy that you're battling or a common cause that you're working towards. And that really unites people like nobody's business. I think, Ronald Reagan put it really well when he was talking about how quickly the world would unite if we faced an external threat like aliens attacking or something like that. It's just human nature, right? If you have a common enemy, people tend to band together and do things differently.
Yep.
Right. Some of the statistics that they shared about why business-to-business companies embrace a purpose, they have greater success than those who don't have a purpose of some kind. It supports recruiting the best people. And a lot of younger people would rather be involved in, they even say that they would take a pay cut to work for a company where they feel like they're doing something good. We had an exercise about this. I think I was in junior high, and we had a teacher ask us, if you could make $1 million, and of course we're in junior high, so we have no idea what that is. But if you never have to work ever again, if you go to work every day from 9 to 5 and you dig a hole, and then every night between 5 and 9, when you show up again, that hole would be filled back in again. And your job the next day would be to dig that hole out again. And then the next day, continue that process. So you're never actually doing anything of value. You are never contributing to anything worthwhile, but you'll make enough money that you would have everything you wanted. Would you accept that as a job? And the answer among, some of the kids in our class was, sure, I'd be able to pursue my hobbies and I'd have enough money for anything I wanted. And, it would be a great job. It'd be a physical job and not terrible, but, it wouldn't be great. But most of us said, heck no, I'm going to cure cancer. I'm going to do something worthwhile with my life, And so I think people feel like they have to be contributing to something. That's just a human, the human condition, We really want to be part of something bigger. We really want to be contributing to something that's helping other people, right?
Yeah. Discounting before college and getting yourself through that. Mm-hmm. But after that, I think I didn't consciously look for a job that did that. That's what I did.
Yeah.
Everything I did, I was contributing to something bigger.
Yeah.
Not because I consciously wanted to, it just happened.
Right. But you've always felt like you were helping people, and you've always gained some satisfaction from that. You weren't digging a hole and filling it in, right? Yeah. And I think a lot of people, if they feel like their job is digging a hole and filling it in, they're just not as motivated. And, of course, your company is not going to be as profitable as if you engaged them in some way and showed them how you're helping and how you're contributing and things like that. So Yeah, it supports recruiting. It supports, it motivates your sales teams, gives them more to talk about with customers other than simply buy our product because we want to make money, buy our product because it helps do all of these things. Shows values and character, drives business growth, deepens customer relationships if they feel like they're part of your cause, right? Deepens relationships with suppliers, builds future reputation, legacy, and deepens relationship with employees. So all of those reasons are good reasons to actually smartly get involved. I mean, you don't want to, when I was younger, I used to be a lot easier to provoke to a fight. I'm not as easy now as I was then. And you do want to be careful to pick your causes and your fights very carefully and make sure that it is something that everybody in your company can get behind. And they actually have a process for that. The process they use is 5 steps, right? So the first one is dissatisfaction. What bugs you? What drives you nuts? What is wrong with the world today? What's wrong with everybody? So dissatisfaction of some kind. 2 is desired change. What would you like to see different about that? And it has to be something that you have in common with everybody that works with you, your clients, your suppliers, your coworkers, everybody else, and so on. So, the more people you can get involved with this, the better. How do you want the world to be different? I think it was, Mahatma Gandhi that says, be the change you want to see in the world. What do you want to be different? Number 3, identifying an enemy. Who are you against? And this can't be a competitor, right? Nobody cares if you want to beat a competitor, but you want to beat an enemy, and that enemy might be, being separated from the community, like in Laura's case, or aircraft records being terrible, people having to suffer losses and things like that because of easily preventable problems like that. In American Express's case, it was the big corporations are getting all of the attention, and small businesses really do drive the economy. So the lack of attention to small businesses was American Express's enemy. REI's enemy was the commercialization of Thanksgiving through Christmas, and all of that. So you have to pick an enemy that is abstract. You're not taking on a human being. You're not getting ugly. You're not getting insulting. You're not getting antagonistic toward a person, right? Number 4, take a stand. What is your stand? What are we for? How are we helping? What is our position, on this?
It can't be what are we against. It's what are we for?
Yes. Mm-hmm. You have an enemy, but, you have to have a position that's more important than the enemy. And then number 5 is, what action do we want people to take? Are we going to use some kind of, and you can do symbols like, the yellow bracelets for the cancer research or whatever and stuff like that, but it has to be something real. It can't be just a symbol, right? So what action are you actually going to take? What result are you trying to incur? And how are you going to do that? Is it by delivering your product? Is it by reducing costs for people? Is it by, establishing this holiday and drawing attention to it? How are you going to go about making that happen? What actions are you going to take? So that's kind of the five steps that they recommend. And I think we should do this. Obviously there are things that we are against. We haven't gone through this process, John and I, formally. I mean, this is the first time we're talking about it live on camera. There are things that we're against, like random acts of marketing, glossy, meaningless. When people think about marketing, sometimes they think that it is glossy or meaningless or deceptive or untruthful. There's a lot of things about marketing that we can be against, and we need to define that into, what desired change do we want to see? Who is the enemy? How do we take a stand? And how do we take action against that? And I think that actually is
we
worth
haven't discussed it, but you are doing all those things already.
We are just not as effectively as we could.
It's more focused than you realize when you step back and look at what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, obviously, we feel very strongly. I mean, what gets us out of bed every morning is our clients and helping them achieve their objectives and helping small businesses in the aviation industry outperform the larger ones, helping our clients do things they didn't know they could and look better than they thought they could. And, all of that is what really turns me on. And that's what really turns on Abdul and Ali and Adila and Shannon and Stella and John. So, that is really important to us. And that's what keeps us driving in the same direction is, getting those great results for our clients. But I think we could be more formal about it. And I think we could be more effective about it by implementing some of the ideas from the book. What do you think?
I think it needs to be discussed.
Of course you do. Like you said, I'm easy to provoke and John is more difficult. So that makes a good check and balance among the two of us. So I have fabulous ideas and he makes me make them practical before jumping over anything into the abyss with crazy ideas. So, okay. Well, I think that is, do you have any famous last words about the book or anything else or the topic? Or?
No, the only thing I'll say is when I grew up, political activism was not a good thing. And in fact, my dad told me every time you see a mob or a group converging downtown, you walk the other way. Mm-hmm. And for years, I did exactly that. Mm-hmm. And he had good reasons for it. And at the time, it was a good thing to stay away from.
Yeah. And I think that's still true. I mean, the mob mentality is an ugly thing. And, we don't want to get involved in that. And we certainly don't want to get dragged into any rabbit holes. And like I said, a lot of the political discourse these days is not changing anybody's opinion. So that is not what we're talking about here. We're talking about doing this in a much more thoughtful and constructive way. But I think...
And elegant.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Exactly. And I think companies have a lot of power, and I think that they would benefit from using it in this way if they do it very deliberately and thoughtfully and don't just pick the first fight that comes along, but do things that are aligned with their purpose and their reason for being in business in the first place. Or scale of 1 to 10, what did you think of the book?
8.
8? Okay. Yeah, I think I'd give it an 8 too. It was not as directly about marketing as some of the things and wasn't as directly useful as some of the books that we've read this year. Great examples of activism in the aviation industry as well.
Yep.
Cool. Okay, well, thanks for joining us and we'll see you next week.